Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Retro Encounter. My name is Christopher Gebauer, and I will be your host for this episode. Josh is unavailable because of life and baby and stuff, but we have an awesome episode for you today, and I'm joined by an incredible crew that includes Alana Hagues.
Hey guys.
And Nilson Carroll.
Yo.
And we are going to be talking about Valkyria Chronicles. So, I guess to start off with, is this the first time everyone's playing the game, or had people been able to play the game before? Nilson, let's start with you.
So this is my first time actually playing the game. I remember when it came out, a couple of my friends had it. I watched them play it, and it seemed really cool, but I never got it myself, and so now I'm playing the Steam version.
Oh, so you're playing on Steam? Nice.
I am. I'm playing on Steam. Fun fact, the window, the title on the window, it says Valkyria Chronicle instead of Valkyria Chronicles. So every time I boot it up, I see that, which I don't know, it just makes me laugh.
That's awesome. It's like, we want to launch it on PC for a whole new audience. Let's misspell it. We win! Yeah. And how about you, Alana? First time playing?
Well, I think most of the site probably know, but I actually reviewed the remastered version back in May, and it was the first time that I played it, so yeah, I'm coming back to it a couple of months later with a different perspective on it, because I came into it with the kind of, oh, this is a Sega strategy game, oh, this might be good, and then was kind of bowled away by how really good it was. So now I'm coming back to it with a bit of knowledge, and enjoying, I would say. So no, this is my second time, and I'm again replaying the remastered version, the PS4, so yeah,
playing it for a second time in very close proximity. So I'm sure you're going to have some really weird moments where you go through and you're like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah.
For me, I played this game back when it came out on PS3. What was that, 2009 or whatever, 2010, and then loved it at the time, absolutely adored it. I was one of those people who tried to get all his friends to buy it, and of course no one did. And when the remaster was announced for PS4, I was incredibly excited. I'm not as cool as Nilson, and I didn't get it on Steam, which I probably should have.
The coolest way to play.
Yeah, right, always. PC Master Race. And, and so, yeah, I got super excited for the remaster, picked it up when it launched, and then when I figured out we were going to be recording an episode about the game, I kind of held off on playing it. So this is my second time through, and it's wonderful being back in this world. I really think that the universe, while very obvious in many ways, is just, and a lot of it has to do with the art style, which we'll get to, but I just think it's a wonderful little game. So, I guess, guys, what do you think about the presentation and the art style?
Ooh.
I mean, the engine was created just for this game to create that whole watercolor thing, and I remember when I first played it, and even now, I think it looks wonderfully unique.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of my favorite things about the game is just how it looks. It's very clean. It's like a look that really can't go out of style.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like the other big cel-shaded game, Wind Waker. It doesn't really look like Wind Waker. Like, it totally looks like its own thing, and it really suits the gameplay and the narrative, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think what I always loved about the watercolor engine also is that when you first meet Welkin, he's sketching.
Mm-hmm.
And it always, to me, kind of felt like this is almost, sketches from his memory. The whole game is kind of this shadowed version of his drawings.
Wow, I never thought of that. That was good.
Yeah, dropping knowledge bombs. That was just always for me just a kind of weird, wonderful presentation quirk of, since it's a storybook, it's told through this prism, and the comic book feel of, when tanks move on the map and all the rest of it, or when people are enemies are walking through bushes and there's the written out rustle like it's on a page and stuff like that. I love that comic feel to the whole game.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. It's aged so well as well. I think, yeah, it just looks really good. Like Nilson was saying, Wind Waker, the only other game I can think of is Akami that's kind of pulled off that unique art style. Like, so Akami is probably more Japanese watercolor, but this is, like you say, Chris, it's like he's sketching out everything that's happened. And it's his memories that he's sketching out. But also, I like the antithesis. So you've got the really beautiful, lush, gentle art style. And then you've got the whole game is centered around warfare. And it's the kind of contrast between the two that works so well. Like, you don't want the beautiful world to be destroyed by warfare. So you have to fight for it. And it's just a gorgeous looking game. And I think, like, that it still stands up on the PS4. And it doesn't look... I mean, you can tell it's not like the highest quality graphic nowadays, but you can definitely say that it looks unique, and it doesn't look that bad at all today. It looks great, actually.
For sure. And it's weird because cell shading. I mean, we're referencing a lot of classic games that, because of that art style, have been able to last longer and haven't aged like a lot of things have. But this is one of the few games that I remember playing on the PlayStation 3 that had a unique art style. And that was one thing that was always, to me, so special about this game, is it really felt alone on the PlayStation 3, whereas a lot of the other games that we just referenced were GameCube, PS2, I think of Dark Cloud 2 as well.
But yes.
This was a game that came out in just my mind at a time where everything was now it's referenced as the kind of brown, drab color palette of the Gears of War to Call of Duty, Fallout 3 era. Wonderful games, but it was that oppressive color palette. And then this game came out of seemingly nowhere and was this breath of fresh air and just vibrant color thrown into that mix. Yeah. And that was one of those, I'll never forget watching that first trailer and just going, this looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And even when you boot up the game and it starts with the tank getting sketched out and then coming to life and going through, I remember seeing that the first time and being like, this is going to be awesome. I don't care if the story's awful or all the rest of it. It's just like this presentation alone just is fantastic.
It's a winner, isn't it?
And it is great. And I mean, thank God that it actually holds up. That would have been awesome if I put on this game for PS4 and been like, this is going to be great, we're going back to a classic. It looked like crap, it was chugging, just being like, oh god, I don't remember any of it.
Yeah.
Rose-tinted glasses for sure.
Yeah.
So the game starts out in this wonderful little town at the outbreak of a war. I guess we should say that this is a faux World War I/World War II universe with a map that looks almost identical to Europe.
What's it called?
Totally
Europa?
Isn't. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
They were burying the lead real well on that one.
Like, I've done enough European history to know, looking at the map, living literally on the outskirts of Europe, just like, so that's Germany.
Except in this case, the Axis power, or the empire as it is in this, really is coming out of Russia. So take that for its own political fun if you want. But Gallia is this tiny little nation between two giant empires that gets caught up in a conflict, and things happen, and that's where we start. And I guess we first get introduced to Welkin and Alicia. Welkin coming back from college, and yeah, as I referenced before, that whole scene of him sketching Trout and Alicia showing up behind him and assuming he's a spy.
Yeah.
And but what do you guys think about the characters in this game? I think it's a very charming beginning, but it is also a little just obvious and overly
cliche.
Sweet. I feel like. Oh yeah,
it's
beyond
cliche.
Belief.
Definitely.
Beyond belief. I mean, all of them. But do you find it charming at all, or when you first started it, was it kind of a turnoff, especially for you, Nilson, being this your first time?
I don't know if I would call it a turnoff. I mean, it's definitely, kind of cliche, kind of silly. But I think the presentation is what what almost makes it acceptable and even enjoyable. None of the cutscenes run very long throughout, at least the parts that I've seen so far, and I think that's really nice. You know, you get these like short little vignettes of these characters, and you know, even the cutscenes where it's just the character profiles. Usually, I don't like things like that. Like that always drives me crazy in like Fire Emblem. But here, like, it really works. Like, the character animations, like, their facial animations are really good. And the voice acting is really, you know, on point. And the game just really sells this narrative that otherwise it might not have, you know, worked. But the presentation is just, it's really top notch. So it didn't bother me, even though you can tell where it's going, and you know, you can kind of see the twists when they're gonna come, but it's still really enjoyable.
How about for you, Alana, especially having just gone through this whole adventure a few months ago?
Yeah, I'm jump on the back of what Nilson's saying. It's tropey, and I could think of another example that I experienced that I would consider quite tropey, but does the tropes so well that it works. And as long as you do the tropes really well, it works. And Valkyria Chronicles is a pretty good example of that. And I think the way, like, I really like Welkin and Alicia. I nearly combined their names there. But like, Alicia is definitely the best and most badass baker ever. So she absolutely wins out for me.
The history of bakers, there's no real comparison. She's just the best.
She is the best. But I've got a soft spot for kind of like geeky characters like Welkin, who will awkwardly come out and compare something to a bug, and he's just like, "Oh, you're just like this mantis," and Alicia's just like, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe, you know, bugs creep me out a little bit.
Not exactly what I want to hear right now, but I guessed compliment coming from you.
Yes. But I do really like the characters because they do their tropes so well. Like Isara, I got particularly attached to, and we'll get to Isara probably a bit more in the next podcast because she becomes quite an important character. Yes. But I think we'll get to this as we move along, but with the rest of your squad, although you only really have a selection of about 6 or 7 main characters who get a lot of plot, you have all these little details about every single character in your little notebook by just the information you get from them or by their abilities and their traits, which is a really cool addition, I think, to this game, which helps it both mechanically but also can pose a bit of a challenge. And I think as we get onto the gameplay, I'd like to bring up some of those because they're really interesting and they're a really nice change of pace for a strategy game. But with characters, I think the tropes are done really well, and like Nilson says, the art style sells the game anyway, so I think they would have to be completely dull and beyond belief for me to sort of put down the game and go, I can't play this anymore. But
yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys entirely. It's a story outside of, I mean, there are plenty of games that are in a World War II type universe. There are plenty of games, where you're saving the world and all the rest of it, and the cliches are heavy and everywhere, but all these characters are incredibly earnest. And even if they're not perfectly created, they're believable.
Definitely.
There's no one here that just feels like they're thrown in to be there's no wasted space. I mean, I guess you could maybe say that about the side characters, but to your point, Alana, that's all bonus. There's really only 7 core people, not including bad guys, that you're really following. And then everyone else, it's just bonus that you can learn more about as you progress if you accomplish certain tasks or goals, which is also a very cool kind of game device of, if you use these squad members, that kind of can help flesh out who they are. But yeah, the voice acting in this game is surprisingly good.
It's really
and for
good.
The writing they're presented with, it's really good. Sarah is done really well by Laura Bailey. Welkin and Alicia are both great. It's I don't know. I remember the first time playing it through feeling the exact same way of, in a lot of ways, I feel like I shouldn't like these people as much as I do, but they're all charming. They're all well presented.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the heart of this game, though, and kind of what we joked about it before, but what it really comes down to is the combat system.
Oh, no.
No? Oh, no?
Oh, no, I don't want to talk about the combat.
You don't like the combat? None of that?
We'll get into it. It's okay, but I've definitely had to shut the game down at points because I was so over it in that moment.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, to start off,
I know you guys really like it.
well, it has its issues, and we'll definitely get into that. And I actually, on this playthrough, have so far had moments similar to you where I've had to stop, take a break, and come back to it at a later time. So you're not alone there. But personally, I'm a big strategy RPG fan, and that was always a huge draw about this game to me, was this idea of kind of taking what in a lot of games for me was always the isometric tactics or PC, action points kind of. I remember games like Commando and whatnot back in the day of turn-based squad games.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved the scope of these maps, and because of the art style, it was just always, and still is to me, just absolutely wonderful to go through with the battle. But it definitely has its flaws, namely being random invisible walls when you're trying to circumvent areas or reach one bit of cover with the last bit of AP.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're screwed and you get murdered. And you lose a character that you've been working and investing a lot of time in, and you want to break everything within a close proximity.
That's the thing. I think one of my major problems with the game is just like there's so much trial and error, and it feels so random at times whether or not one of your units is gonna die, and then there's there's not that much you can do about it, and the evasion and accuracy is so it's either really you get really lucky and Alicia doesn't get hit once, or boom, she's dead in a second. And the first couple missions that I did, I didn't realize that you could save every turn or as many times as you want. And then once I learned that, I was like, oh well, I'm gonna save after every move I make, because
spam.
Yeah.
Exactly, save scum my way to victory, because it seems unfair at times, just what you can't really plan for, and sort of the random nature of how much damage an attack's going to do or something. I come from playing a lot of Tactics Ogre, for instance, where you can see all the enemies, and when you go to do an attack, it tells you your accuracy and how much damage it's going to do and how much damage they're going to do in retaliation, and it just gives you so much information that you make really educated moves. But in Valkyria Chronicles, sometimes I feel like it's really a shot in the dark what's going to happen, which can be frustrating at times.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of it feels like a hidden number generator instead of everything being explicitly out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's, and by the way, bonus points for mentioning Tactics Ogre on this podcast. You're instantly the best. But even in something like an XCOM, where what the percentage of a shot's going to be.
Yeah.
You have the visual cues that say the shots could be anywhere in this circle for the different classes. But there's nothing else to really say, oh, you're going to be guaranteed to get a hit here, or it's going to be really hard to get that hit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll go on streaks with a given class, I'm thinking specifically about the tank battle in Chapter 7, and we'll plot. But, yeah, exactly, and that was the big one. We also have it written down as we need to talk about that. But there were moments where with Lancers,
mm-hmm.
I was just getting 10 hits in a row at obscene ranges, and it was amazing. Everything was working out, and then at point blank I was missing. And I just, to your point, Nilson, there's no real logic that the game is presenting you other than, let's hope you're lucky. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That'd make you happy.
There
So
are,
things work out.
like, every once in a while Alicia will get her potential or whatever, and she'll get, like, she has 100% accuracy, but even that only comes up randomly, so there's no way to, like, plan ahead that that's going to happen. And so it's so smart to save before every move that it's kind of clunky in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, in combat there are multiple classes that you can choose from. There's the Scout, which is the long range, and by that I mean long movement, a lot of action points to move around, really check out the battle, give you a good look. That's what Alicia is. And solid weapon with the rifle. Then there's the Shock Troopers, which are a little bit more close combat and just do nasty damage with a submachine gun. The Lancers, which are the anti-tank units, and the Engineers, which can replenish grenades or Lancer ammo, but really aren't really combat units. Fix tanks, super important, or take out mines. Then we got the Tank, which Welkin is in, controlled by Welkin and Asara, and the Snipers.
Best class.
Yeah, I agreed, very much so.
Very
The
much.
snipers?
Yeah.
They can be delightfully game-breaking.
That's true.
But I also liked how, Nilson, when you were explaining combat, you just used Alicia in every example. Because the follow-up to that is, what's your favorite class / character to use? I got a feeling we might all say the same one.
Well, there are, as everyone probably knows, there are several missions where you can finish the mission in one turn by just keep using Alicia over and over again to run her to the end point.
Yep.
And, kill the one guard who's guarding the enemy base, and then, boom, you won in one turn, no strategy. Because she's good, and the scouts, they have such a high level of mobility that it's really simple in a lot of cases to move them over, and just finish the mission without, snipers. I don't want to deal with snipers. I just want to get through the mission.
Snipers, killing the enemy. It's all about the win.
Oh, but
Get the win.
the one turn thing is so unsatisfying though. I like taking out, not everybody, but I like feeling like I've done something.
Actually won a battle.
Yeah, I want to take on.
I
I died so many times, so I was like, okay, Rosie, you can go in, and if you don't die, then it's fine. And so she'll just shoot the ever-loving life out of everybody, and then I'll either die or not die, and see what happens. But
see what happens from there. Yeah.
yeah, like, I definitely agree with the trial and error thing, but also a lot of it is down to you, and I think my favourite thing about jumping slightly back into the battle system, because I don't play strategy games very often. Like, I'm not a big fan of them. They're a bit slow for me. Fire Emblem is about the only one I've touched, and I've probably got about 2/3 of the way through, and they're grind fests. They're so slow. But like, what I like about Valkyria Chronicles is that you aim. So like, a lot of it, although it is random partially where people can dodge, a lot of it is down to you. So like, you want to do more damage, aim for the head. If you miss the head, you're going to do less damage or no damage. But yeah, Shock Troopers are great, and maybe not my favourite class, but like I've mentioned, snipers are the best class. Marina is the best sniper.
Marina, yes, indeed.
She's a beaut. I mean, I do have my other favourite class / characters, but we'll talk about them in a minute. And if people listen to Dreamcast Encounter, they probably know what I'm going to talk about. So I'm just holding back I'm sure the entire...
You are keeping these cards to the chest. I like it.
Yeah.
I kind of am in between on how I feel about the combat going back to this game. It's a mix between what both of you have said. I've noticed I've had a lot more frustration playing this game this time through in terms of the little quirks of random geometry, getting snagged on a battlefield, stuff like that. The bizarre logic of sometimes a miss and all the rest of it. But to your point, Alana, of how, once you move your character and you take your shot, it's not just hitting a menu. You get to aim, and you feel a little bit more in control.
Yeah.
And especially with, I love using the Edelweiss and the tank and the ability to go, okay, I'm going to be going after a tank, and I'm going to use, of course, anti-tank shell. Or, okay, there's a group of guys right next door. Maybe I'll go with a mortar shot, or do I just take out one guy guaranteed with the machine gun? It does feel more directly connected to what you, the player, does, instead of just saying, okay, character, this is my choice for you, hopefully you hit.
Yeah.
And that does, for me, make it a little bit more engrossing going through. It's weird because there's so many battles, and we mentioned all the classes a few seconds ago, but not until the mid-game do I really ever use engineers.
Yeah, I didn't use engineers.
Like engineers, yeah, they're a class that is you almost never need except for boss encounters.
Yeah.
Or if there's a situation where you feel like you're really getting screwed by lancers, and then I feel like the engineer is useful. But, there are times where I feel like I'm just doing scout, sniper, and Largo and Rosie because I want the extra command points to actually be able to make moves and whatnot. But for the most part, I always have 2 to 3 scouts, and then 1 or 2 snipers, the tank, and a couple shock troopers, just because, especially if you're defending a point, you just put them behind sandbags and they just mow everyone down, and it's so satisfying.
Oh, so satisfying.
Just fantastic defense. But I guess one thing I forgot to mention before is that your main hero character, Welkin, can also issue orders.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
And all of this is managed through command points, which you have a set amount from your hero characters. Add 1 command point if they are on the battle. And if you don't use up your allotment of command points, they then get saved and roll over to the next turn. So you can really wait 2 or 3 turns on defense and then kind of just go for a crazy onslaught, or use up all your points every turn and just have the same amount. But orders are a very cool element to the game, but I also find myself almost never using them.
Yeah.
Or at least using one of them only.
Yeah, heal. Like, oh god, this guy just got shot up by a machine gun that I didn't think could see him. Or her, I guess I'm going to heal you now. Like crazy with the heal order. That's really all I use. It's the heal order.
I think it's I forget what the defense one is very overpowered.
Oh, yeah.
Giving that to, for instance, Alicia, she's pretty unstoppable. She'll get to the end point in 1 turn if you give her the defense order.
She's the best.
She's really good, yeah.
So good. Best Baker.
She's just nice. She's wonderful. She can murder everyone.
And then
She's really just
the
the most wonderful woman. Yeah, and just an incredible baker.
Yeah.
She's great. There's a good command which we'll probably bring up in the next podcast that becomes extremely useful, but one flaw with the gameplay is that it's like with the snipers, it can be easily broken, and that is something we'll probably touch on next podcast with abilities as well, because we're talking about Alicia being overpowered in the beginning of the game.
Thanks, Ginge.
Wait until she gets to the end of the game.
Then she's the bestest. And for those people who have played this game who are listening in, and if you happen to play the sequel on PSP, then it's always like, how did she end up here, considering everything she's gone through? But anyway, that's we'll talk about that next time. So I guess we played up till Chapter 10.
Yep.
That was the goal for this one. What do you guys think of the story here? We touched on it before, and that, cliches and all the rest of it, but it's endearing. The cast is wonderful. But as a faux World War II / World War I with certain elements in its plot, what do you think of it? What do you think of our bad guys? This Lord Maximilian, Silvaria, and the other generals, Gallia as a nation and trying to defend themselves. Like, is it we said we like the characters, but do you guys enjoy how the story tracks, or is it kind of just there as an excuse to get from mission to mission?
Not an excuse, but it is very.
Jeremy.
No, I know. But I mean, I like it, but it's what I would expect. It's kind of the bare minimum. So even though it's like
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
it's the faux, even though it's like faux World War One, World War Two, like you've got your very typical JRPG trope of hidden race, mystical ruins, mystical race. One of your
Guy with
characters is
blonde hair.
yeah, white-haired villain.
Yeah.
But no, like I think I'm being a bit reductive. It is like you're following it because you like the main characters, and you bring up the villains. The villains I don't really have any opinion on because I don't. Again, they just seem so typical, but they're not as charming as your main cast of characters. So like,
For sure.
Selvaria gets close to being. I mean, I like Selvaria. She's cool. She's got a really cool weapon, and she's pretty.
Awesome hair.
She has awesome hair, but
This is what matters. We got to talk about these things.
we do. But she's again, her character's kind of a bit reduced by the fact that she basically just becomes kind of everything I do is for Lord Maximilian. Like, really?
Yeah.
Why? Like, you could be so much, and she is really great, but she could be really great. Maybe is a better way of putting it. But I feel like the only reason I'm following this is to root for the main characters. And I want to touch on something that Nilson brought up earlier, but another thing I perhaps like more than the story is the way it's presented. And Nilson was talking about the visionettes that you get, and I really like the way that the game is broken into smaller chunks, so you don't get like a 20-minute cutscene. You'll get one 2-minute cutscene and then another 3-minute one, but you can save and go and train up between this and that if you want.
Yeah.
And I really like that kind of storybook chapter feel that the game embraces, and it makes it more bearable, and it makes it definitely helps. Doesn't hinder, it does help. So like, even though everything's a bit more minimal, this kind of helps move it along and keeps me invested, at least.
It lets you digest the game at a much more in a much more reasonable way.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're annoyed by certain moments or characters, you don't have to have the 20 minutes like you said, which I think is so helpful.
Yeah, and you can skip them all as well. And also there are optional cutscenes, so if you want some exposition, go for it, but you don't have to do it. And it's like, great. Like, how often do we get that choice? Like, usually never. So it's a nice addition that I think should be done more.
So have you guys paid for all the writing on the wall side chapters at this point?
Yes, I did.
I pay for them, but I don't read them.
You're the best, dude. You're just like, no, not at all. Whatever. They're there.
Oh, I did.
I did too. Totally.
It was nice to see the progression with the I've forgotten her name, the newspaper reporter. Ellett, that's it, because she narrates. I should remember that. I like that because she follows you around, and then a couple of chapters later, you'll get the feedback back from her in the form of those newspaper reports, and it's like, again, it's actually, the game invests you in the world. So not only are you invested in the combat, you're actually getting news reports as though you are
on your activities. Like you're the heroes at the front line.
It's really cool.
How about you, Nilson? Do you agree with us on this, or are you just listening to us and being like, this is
one of my favorite sequences in the first 10 chapters is when you go to the some sort of a formal event with the princesses there, and then like that night she gets kidnapped, and then the mission is you have to go save her, and because it is so minimal and the cutscenes are so short, they pack in so much narrative and so much atmosphere into like not even 10 minutes of dialogue. And I just think that's so cool, and so unlike a lot of other RPGs that I've played. You're 1 minute you're in wherever the throne room, and you see this, little political thing going on, and his friend is like, I've had enough of this, I'm leaving. And, Welkin's like, okay. And then, immediately, it only goes on for like 1 minute, and then they're in the hall, and Welkin talks to the princess, and the commander woman is like, Welkin, like, you shouldn't speak to the princess like that. And it's just, it goes by so fast. And then the princess gets kidnapped, and then you have to go save her, and like you have to like take down that truck, and like this like dirty steampunk alleyway, and it's just so cool. And it's like the whole sequence is only like 20-30 minutes long, and that really exemplifies what I think the game does well, which is it just packs in this content in a really digestible manner, and it's just really enjoyable. That's actually one of my favorite missions too, just because it's so it has so much to do with the narrative, and it's very explicit about what you're supposed to do and how it affects the story. Whereas some of the missions, at least the ones I've played so far, don't. There's the one where Welkin and Alicia are stuck in the woods, and you have to like dodge the spotlights, and like I didn't even like know why I was there, like what was going on.
Bonding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bonding and humanity. That's the point of that mission.
Oh yeah.
Chapter 8, Part 1.
So yeah, but I think when the game gets it right, it really gets it right. So.
Yeah, I mean, what both of you guys just talked about is the idea of that the style and presentation really sells so much of what the game offers. Like it's digestible. The storybook, not only just because you can flip back between chapters, but it becomes, and I guess for me, it's kind of what I talked about at the beginning, it gives it this kind of predetermined sense of nostalgia. We're re-witnessing things that have already happened. So you don't have to see every little moment between the characters. You just get to see what matters. And thankfully, I do think the game is really good about not just having a conversation between people because they feel obligated to be like, these people should be talking for a while to show that they're friends. It's usually they're talking because it's either going to foreshadow a moment that's about to come up, it's going to give you a hint to something that's going to come up in the battle, or it's setting you up for, a major moment between a couple characters coming up, or between the whole squad. But nothing feels, well, maybe other than that pig. Well, maybe nothing.
God.
Really, yeah. It's adorable, but it's really weird, and it can somehow oink in perfect response, which kind of is horrifying. I really think they should have investigated that pig. I don't know why that didn't happen. That pig is super advanced and wings, and this needs to be investigated. I'm just saying. The fact that he just becomes a squad member, and they're like, yeah. This is our oinky guy. This is what he does. Yeah, that was the live stream.
Pigs are meant to be intelligent. It doesn't help that I don't like pigs anyway, but...
I don't know if you guys, I think you get it through Ellet, but there's a side mission with Largo. You have to basically rescue the supply route for food.
Yes,
and
I love this.
It's a great one, but in my heart of hearts, I'm also just like, oh, if everyone's starving, why don't you just eat the pig?
Oh,
like, it's that bad.
But Largo wants to have a vegetable patch. That's all he wants.
He really likes vegetables.
He does.
And he is the Popeye of the group, like it's nobody's business.
He's adorable. But like, you've got a pig. Like, maybe you can have a little bit.
Like, everyone's talking about starving. I'm just saying. Only one person seems to really care about that pig. And that's Elite. So you can just let her do some awesome mission. She's more than capable. She's more capable than probably the whole squad, actually. And, when she comes back, you just be like, oh, I don't know. He was here. He just went off.
That's how they distract her.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can do the mission by yourself.
We're going to eat some bacon. I mean, we're going to take a nap. Don't worry about it. Yes, and bad. Nothing's happening here. So I mean, so chapter 9 in terms of saving the princess, that was a pretty big standout for you, Nilson.
Yeah, I like that mission.
That is that one's really fun and varied. And to your point, you talked about how everything kind of ties together and narratively makes sense, and in that way keeps you a lot more invested. Was there any other missions from these first 10 chapters for any of us that really stood out? I mean, did we like Chapter 7? Did we enjoy the tank battle in the desert after the previous tank battle?
I really liked the section as far as the narrative goes. That's, for me, when the game really started picking up. I thought it was really cool when they go down into the ruins and they meet Maximilian. I not knowing very much about the game, I was actually kind of surprised at how much was going on. And I guess in retrospect, it was really obvious something like that was going to happen. But I thought it was really cool, I really like the idea of they go into this ruins and Alicia touches it and the door magically opens. And then they meet the bad guys, and then Maximilian's we'll take this outside. We can't.
I will not soil this space with blood. Wow, that guy is committed.
Yeah,
ancient race. Good on him.
So I thought that cutscene was really cool. I don't know about the actual battle though.
Yeah, and Alana, please cut me off if I'm kind of saying anything too ridiculous here, but it does feel like the game, and I guess you also mentioned this, Nilson, it feels like a little bit of a tutorial up until that mission.
Yeah.
You keep learning something new every chapter.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's very useful in terms about how the world works, how different elements, whether they be mines being introduced for the first time or something else, and which is really the first time it feels like engineers ever need to be on the map, and I feel like that's chapter 4 or 5. So you've already done a bunch of battles, and they're like, now this class, if you had it before, whoops, only now is it really going to do anything.
Yeah.
When you learn that you can, take out reinforcements and redeploy them at camps.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, not this time playing through, but I remember the first time playing through, when that was explained to me, I was like, why would I ever actually have a full squad out at the beginning of a battle then? If I can just take a camp and then just deploy everyone so far forward.
Yeah.
And every chapter introduces something new, and then after chapter 9, after the mission with the princess, I feel like the game really then just becomes, all right, you have almost all the tools. You might gain a few more as we go on with new orders, with new other stuff. But at that point, it really just becomes, here you go, win your battles.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
But I hate that tank in Chapter 7.
Oh, God.
It's kind of just like you were saying, the build-up, all the chapters up to that point have been tutorials, and then they're like, well, you're ready for a giant tank now, I think. And it's just like, oh, boy, really? You do
it's just like, well, how is this comparable to everything else that's been building up to this?
I mean, once you get what you've got to do, it's not too bad. It's not the tank that's the issue. It's when you've taken out half the tank, and Valkyria's just like, so I finished my battle, now I'm going to come and help, and you just look at her with her massive army, and then she runs halfway across the map, and will take out
your whole party.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what are you doing with that laser?
Mm-hmm.
No issues up until that point with saving members or anything going wrong, and then that mission happens, and I had 3 people actually die.
Yeah.
I thought about reloading, but I decided, it's going to be a hardcore playthrough, permadeath, keep it going. But I know I'm really intense, let's be honest. But yeah, I remember she just went through and in one turn took out 4 people, and then the few that she hadn't, that were isolated on one side of the map, I'm like, I can't move them because she'll just auto kill them because of her tracking. So good luck, guys. And then she slowly but surely hunts them down.
Yeah.
And by the end, I just have a tank and 2 lancers just eating away at the tank, hoping that she won't see them. That was I lost Jan. That was hard.
Oh no.
Yeah, you just got to take the right side of the tank down first, and is it the left or the right? By right, I mean correct. So I think left. That's
You meant the left. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Hide on the other side in the meantime.
and then just chip away at it. But it's definitely, that does feel like a mission where it is mostly trial and error.
And
you wouldn't know that Selvaria was going to turn up halfway through the fight.
yeah, exactly. She shows up and it's like, well, if you weren't in the right spots, everyone dies.
Yeah.
It's like what Nilson, what you were talking about before about halfway through certain missions, it just can feel like, oh, there's nothing I could have done to prepare for this because there was no hint that it would happen this way. And I just kind of got screwed.
I will say, I like that mission stands out for me because it throws so many different kinds of challenges at you. And that's definitely a mission where Alicia can't handle it on her own. You know, you have to use your lancers, and you can use your snipers and feel like a badass. And I thought that was really cool. What I didn't like about that mission is, so the tank is only vulnerable after it fires its shot, right? And to make it fire the shot, you have to blow up the walls, and so you have to. And what happened in my game, and I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but I ended up having to wait a couple turns, and the tank was just sitting there next to all the new units that came in, all the new enemy units that came in, and I just had to hide for a couple turns while I waited for the tank to fire the shot at the last wall. And I don't know if maybe I did something in a wrong order, but I was really nervous that it wasn't gonna work or something. And meanwhile, my units are getting one-shotted, so it seemed almost unfair.
Sometimes.
But I guess you're supposed to, feel very overwhelmed at that point. So I guess it did a good job at making me nervous.
Yeah, great success at feeling useless in that one.
Yeah. It does not help that the tank controls oh god. I hate how the tank controls.
Yes, I was going to say the word for you. But good on you for it.
Yeah. I just can't. Don't say the word. Get us kicked off.
It's awful. It's just awful.
Yeah, it controls like a real tank. Well done. Awfully.
Yeah, some very fun Capcom-inspired tank controls on that one, and it's kind of hilarious how just of a reminder it is. It's good that most games have moved on from that style. Yeah, when you're trying to dodge that giant tank with the Edelweiss and trying to fit through quarter, you're just like, hey, this is useless. I'm totally screwed, and I'm getting shot at. And I got very close to actually losing the Edelweiss because I couldn't get an engineer close to the tank.
Yeah.
Because of Silvaria. And at the same time, for whatever reason, with the way the Batimus or whatever that tank is called, Maximilian's giant juggernaut, there was no way to maneuver around it in this one section when it was coming up upon the second outpost. I'm just sitting there hoping it decides to shoot down the wall and not me, and that maybe I'll get a chance to save myself. It's just like, all right, whatever. Here's hoping. There's a lot of that in that battle.
Yeah,
although I
definitely.
guess, to your point, Nilson, supposed to feel helpless.
Yeah.
Really did. Mission accomplished. Not the best feeling. Congratulations, game. You did it. So with talking about the tank and the weapons, have you guys done a lot of customization for the Edelweiss or for your squad's tech trees for guns and whatnot? Have you made sure to buy all the upgrades in between every mission that are available for you?
Yeah, I did, and I found it quite easy to get money anyway because I found quite a cheap way of one-shotting one of the side missions that you get. And it was basically just throw Vice out into the middle of the battlefield and he will just one-shot everybody and do it all in one turn. And so I would get a lot of money very quickly and would proceed to spend it on the tank. But actually, the customization on the tank I found really limited, because you have such a small space, especially later on when you get another tank. Why not? Let's spoil it. Yeah.
It's about to come up. It's the next chapter. We get the Shamrock.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, like the space that you get to customize and the size of some of the blocks, it's just, I don't know. You have to choose whether you want a defensive tank or an offensive tank, and usually I use my tank as a defensive wall, so I didn't really use it very often, and would use lancers if I had to absolutely take anything heavy out. But the weapons I would always upgrade, but I would always go for accuracy over power.
So when the tech tree does deviate, you've tried to focus on the accuracy.
Yeah, I tried
to make sure you can get those headshots.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, always.
Yeah, you got to get those headshots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, especially on the tank parts. It just feels like a very frustrating game of Tetris.
Yeah, it does. Like, there's only really a couple that are helpful. So you get like extra armor for the engine, or you get like a slightly longer barrel for the gun.
So range or accuracy is just minorly increased.
Yeah, or like the treads you'll get like reinforced treads, but at the same time, I didn't really have any problem with losing my treads, actually. I don't really think the enemy AI ever went for them, so I never really put the tread bonus on. So
Interesting.
Maybe I just got really lucky, but
I don't think that's ever happened to me yet.
Yeah,
the tread thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I just try and back the tank into a wall wherever I can and just shoot. And then they'll try and attack me, and it's like, no, you can't get to me. But
I have the worst luck then. You guys, like, this never happened to you? There are so many battles where some lancer from halfway across the map will take a shot just 'cause, almost like a sniper, and it just will always hit the treads.
Oh, no.
I can't remember if it halves or more than that. Your AP. So unless you fix the tank, you just can't move.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's happened to me in, I think, 3 missions already. And
God.
I never, kind of to your point with both of you, it's like, I never remember that ever happening to me before in playing this game. What is this? Suddenly they just decided, you know what? We don't really like those treads. Screw your treads. You don't get to use them. How do you like that? Just every mission.
Yeah.
That was the big one. My biggest problem in Chapter 7 was when Sylvaria spawned with her little squad.
Oh,
the one Lancer that spawned with them, instead of marching across the map like everyone else did, just from that spawn point, somehow hit the treads. And I was like, come on! Stuck there, waiting to die slowly. This is how I go. This is where it ends for Welkin Gunther.
Oh,
sad story.
Sad.
He and Isara put out to pasture. And actually, that's a weird little bridge of thoughts, but Isara is a Darkson.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is this game's version of tackling racism. And let it be noted that everybody in this game is white. Everyone is white. And except that people who have black hair are hated for being a race that at one point, way back in time, apparently created this cataclysmic explosion, and so they're all considered bad luck and bad people because they create problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a difficult subject.
I mean, other than really the Rosie plotline, does it track again for any of you guys? I mean, some squad mates have, Darkson hater as a trait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so that can be an issue.
Yeah, so that's the only place that I really see it flagging up again. But we'll probably touch on it more in the second podcast, where the Rosie plotline is quite important to Rosie's development and actually to the whole squad's kind of camaraderie. Yeah. But again, like I said,
but for what we've played so far, it does kind of, at least for me, it just feels like it's there.
Yeah.
And it just exists as their version of racism.
Yeah.
Yeah, although it if we are talking about it as a faux World War One, World War Two thing, then it does address the elephant in the room, kind of the token bad guys blame all the problems on one particular race of people.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's something I didn't touch on when we were going over the tropes. Like, as well as the mystical race thing, this is also a JRPG trope. Like, there's one singular race, like whether it be half-elves or elves or dwarves, they're always singled out for doing something. This time it's something called Darkson, and yeah, it does feel like it's a little bit just there.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Alana. It does become more integral as we move on, but it for what we've played up to so far, up to Chapter 10, it does feel a little bit just like a checkbox.
Mm-hmm. It's always really almost silly to me where I am at the game, just because, like, oh, Rosie's on screen. She's going to say something racist.
Yeah.
All right.
Aunt Rosie had a little too much to drink. Watch out. She's going to say something. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost solely her. Like, you don't really see it elsewhere in the world, which I think would have been more interesting and sort of nice as far as like developing the world a bit more would go. But it's only her issue, and like all the other characters are like, all right, like shut up, like that's all you talk about. So I don't know, but you guys say that it gets touched on in more depth later.
Yeah, they definitely use the Darkson, I guess not just the Darkson character we know in Asara, but also as a race and everything else. It becomes a little bit more of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, it is just kind of like set up for this conflict exists between people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really all it's been so far. It's just a way to say, oh, there is a group that is vilified for kind of unknown bias or ancient bias, we should say. And, going back to Chapter 7 and going into the Valkyria temple is kind of learning that potentially that giant explosion actually wasn't Darkson. It could have been the Valkyria.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this hate is misfounded.
Oh.
We'll grow people through these experiences. But yeah, it does come up with certain characters as a trait. And with most of those characters, I just haven't used them because usually their personalities are also kind of like, we suck as people.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think about the traits? We touched on that also a little bit earlier on. Whether it be, desert allergy or nature lover, things like that. Have you been good about selecting your squad according to terrain and all those traits and focusing on it? Or has it just kind of been, oh, I forgot that there has that thing until all of a sudden desert allergy kicks up. You're like, oh, now we're slowly dying because we're in the middle of a Whoops.
I think they're a good idea. But yes, I do tend to forget. Like, I use Aika a lot, but I'll always put her in grass. And Aika has hay fever, and or pollen allergy, as it's called, and I'll put her in grass to hide away, and then she'll be like, oh no, like I'm living in grass. I'm just like,
and then you're like, oh no,
I'm just like, every time. They are a really good idea. Like, the bonus ones are really good. So Marina's got a really good one where she'll sometimes get a free shot, or she will get a definite headshot, which is glorious. And
she's the best. She's the best one so far.
Best. But some of them are really good. So, like, the thing that I was doing with Vice in the side mission, he has an ability where if you throw him into, like, a field of, like, 4 or 5 gunners, his stats will double. And it's like, well, this is really easy then, isn't it? Just run through it. But they're a really good idea. And I think if I'd had the choice to make larger squads, so I think you can only pick like 9 people, can't you, a fight? Or so if I'd had the ability, and especially since one's a tank, and then you've got Alicia Rosie and Largo just to get you those extra. Yeah, you only get a choice of like 6 people, and it's like if I had a bigger squad, I'd probably experiment a little more. But I didn't really utilize them as much. But I think I was fortunate in that a lot of the later missions don't have as much grass, and I just kind of dealt with them because a lot of the plus sides, the better positive traits for a lot of the characters outweighed the negatives, so I'd just try and make sure that weighed in my favour. They're a good idea, and I don't know if they're improved on in the sequels, because I've not played the sequels yet. That would be something I'd be interested in knowing. Have either of you played the sequel?
I have played the second one. That was the only one that made it stateside.
True.
I didn't import the third one.
No.
I only got through, I guess, just to touch on it now before the next episode, I only played about halfway through it because I got so frustrated with... There's a lot more customization in that game, just from the get-go, in terms of within classes and all the rest of it, and they do a lot of amazing improvements. But it all takes place at a training academy, and without spoiling this plot yet, because we haven't finished the game, there are definite elements to that in terms of characters who return, and the way that they exist now infuriated me as a player. And after going through Valkyria 1, just like, why are you here in this way? And it's even more kitsch in terms of everyone's being smiley and happy and high-fiving. And it just feels so less everything feels less important. There is no actual death. There's really no threat of people dying because so many people are so integral to random moments in the story. And so you kind of also have this permanent cast of 40 or 50. Again, there are a lot of improvements. The combat is actually a lot better, I think, in the sequel, but everything else outside of just the battles themselves, really, I found very rough. But I should go back to it because that was a while ago. And especially playing this game again, I do love that world, and it would be fun to just jump back in. And it's a good game, just has flaws, like many games. I mean, Nilson, I don't know how you feel about the whole thing, but kind of like what Alana said with traits, good idea. I think it's a great way to put it. I like the concept of, if you're put beside this person because they're good friends, their attack's going to be that much better. But unfortunately, once I get comfortable with certain characters, and I think and they've started doing a great job, and especially if you've unlocked their hidden potential, and I forget, I double-checked online to see how the different things stack. You have to, I think for every kill a character gets, they get like 3 points or something. And if it's taking a camp, it's 2 or it's 1, and there's something else that also affects this hidden point system. And there's no counter ever shown to you that you're earning these points. But after a set number, your characters unlock their hidden potential. Their special ability.
I didn't even know that.
Because it never tells you. And I didn't really totally realize that it was that specific and that kind of, well thought out, because the game never told you. And the first time I played through, I just thought, okay, after a certain amount of kills with characters, they're going to get this. That's all I thought. But there is a more nuanced system behind it. They just never let you know. But as you use those squad members and train them up, even if you haven't fully unlocked the hidden potential, you also flesh out their backstory within the glossary of characters. So the more you use them, the more knowledge about each person also unfolds, which I actually kind of like. Again, unfortunately, I think the trait system just never feels as useful or integral as it should. But I do like the idea that you get these recruits that come in through the militia as the game goes on, a la, constant recruiting calls throughout a war. And if when you first get them in the squad, or potentially can have them in the squad from the barracks, all you know about them is their name, where they come from, and maybe a little bit of info. Tiny bit. Like, oh, this is who this kind of guy is. Or this girl, she's, had this kind of life leading up to now, and now she's here. But then if you use them more, then it becomes, oh, actually, she also had this whole life doing, performance and blah, 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 blah. But it turns out, that because of a tragedy, that didn't end up, being all sunshine and happiness. And that acting career has now become, a moot point because everyone died. And so now she's here for vengeance. And then if you, unlock that hidden potential, there's even more there that goes, I like that kind of hidden thing. It's there if you want it.
Yeah.
But it's in its own page, and if you don't care, it doesn't matter. So, yeah, it feels like a good idea that just never really feels useful 100%.
Yeah.
Except for those hidden potentials, because they can be phenomenal.
I wish, like you said, like it doesn't necessarily feel useful. I wish overall that the game just had more customization, I guess. So, even like, the first half of the game before you even get to like the different like weapon branches where you can choose like which one you want to equip, it just feels very superfluous. Like, all right, like I'm gonna upgrade the scouts rifles, like, all right, like
plus 50 accuracy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just, I wish that from the very beginning there was more emphasis on customization and like really training up your units how you want to use them, and it doesn't really feel that way. Even when you get to the different branches, like Alana said, the accuracy, definitely go with accuracy. It's very useful. I wish there was more options, I guess, more useful options and more ways to train your units.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like the level up system, this is to both of you, but do you also feel like it's kind of arbitrary that, because stats don't really go up?
Yeah.
At least not that you see.
Mm-hmm.
Possible they are.
You get like a little bit of HP.
Yeah. It's the only thing you notice is the HP goes up a tiny bit.
Yeah.
There's the potential of them getting potential of them unlocking another potential.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get an order.
Yeah.
But other than that, there isn't a lot of tangible kind of consequences to leveling, to upgrading, other than the tank. I think you're right, which is interesting because, Alana, you asking about the sequel, that's the one thing the sequel does incredibly well. It's from very early on in that game, there's a lot of customization available to you.
Cool.
Okay.
Like a Lancer can very, very soon, you can either make them anti-tank, or you can focus on them and make them anti-infantry with a mortar gun or something else. Or when it comes to how you can kind of tailor your squad within classes, the sequel is above and beyond this game. It really takes the groundwork laid here and just runs with it. My issues are everything outside of the combat. I think the sequel actually does an incredible job with that. But personally, I'm with you, Nilson. It does feel like just tiny little incremental upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like if you've spent all that money, there's that tangible sense of like, now I've got the right weapon for this.
Yeah.
It feels more like if I don't do this, I'm probably going to be screwed.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's fine.
And I guess that's just, me wanting it to be more like more RPG-ish, which just, it's not that kind of game. I love, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Etrian Odyssey, which is all about, super customization and like, really planning ahead with all of your characters and like managing your
the most
strength.
extreme RPG, mapping out the dungeon.
Oh God, yeah.
But I guess that's more where I lean. Like, I like that kind of thing, and that's just not really the kind of game it is.
No, it's not. That is other level kind of depth.
Yeah.
I get that, actually. I think maybe the reason I like it maybe a little bit more is because I don't play as many strategy or like customization RPGs, and I like the fact that I've got a little bit more of a streamlined process for it. With leveling, I like the way your entire squad goes up at once, which is nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Because it means if I want to change my party, I don't have to think like, oh no, I have to go back and grind with this character. No, you can distribute the experience yourself, like a proper squad leader. And I like that side of it. But absolutely, I feel like the customization, the abilities will feel a bit arbitrary and kind of like a side project. Like, you could probably get through it without using any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and we've definitely had a few games like this on the podcast, so, up to this point. But I realized that we've said a lot of things that feel like we're just criticizing the game predominantly, but I do think we all like this game, and some of us definitely like it a lot. Like, I, for one, do actually love it, but it is the sum is greater than its parts.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Piece by piece, there are a lot of little, sometimes big, but mostly I would say small annoyances, nuisances, and sometimes they're actual issues. And they're throughout multiple facets of the game, but in a lot of ways it comes down to what we talked about from the get-go, the presentation of it all. And even if it's flawed with its story and all the rest of it, it's just incredibly endearing and earnest and charming. And for the script that they're given, these voice actors did a great job. And the plot is just, I know I'm recapping, but it is super shallow, and it just feels like it's enough to get you from bit to bit. I love how you said that, Alana. I think it's spot on. It is just enough to not totally tune out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, since the characters are fun or quirky or interesting, that's okay. And we don't have to go through those moments, to Nilson's point from earlier, of like the 2-hour monologue, Kojima style, when it's all over and you're like, I don't care about that person. And then they just died. And why did I waste 3 hours? You don't have any of that.
No.
Everything is purposeful, even if it's not perfect, which I really do admire the game for.
Yeah.
Everything is there for a reason. It doesn't feel throwaway. Even if it doesn't work, it's there because they were trying something. I do think it's important, before we kind of wrap up, and we touch on the Skies of Arcadia tie-ins.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's not for me. This is not a concern for my heart, but Alana, who are some of your favorite characters in this game?
It should be a concern for your heart. Actually, have you played it? Because
I have not. I didn't have a Dreamcast back in the day, and when I started hunting down GameCube games, it was already far too expensive.
Oh yeah, no, that's sad.
It is just one of the giant kind of stains on my honor. Like
No.
Game. No, it's one of those ones I really do want, but I also, since I collect systems and hard copy, I'm an idiot, and I want the actual game, so I keep not playing it.
Yeah, maybe because Sega seemed to forget how good they are at making RPGs. Like, look at Phantasy Star and...
Or how good they can be.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, maybe...
A lot of mistakes.
Yeah, maybe they'll bring it out on PS4. Like, go on, Sega, please.
I'm surprised it's not on, like, Steam yet. I think it would do really well.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
Steam seems like an easy sell, and they just haven't done it. It's bizarre. But I do think, I don't know actually how well this remaster sold. I'm sure it did all right enough, especially for how much R&D they probably had to put into it. I'm sure it did fine. But that always seems like a no-brainer. Skies of Arcadia already left its original platform back in the day. I don't see why that game can't make it to other platforms. But so, who are your favorite characters in this game? Before we start talking about the other game that we're not playing right now.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, Vice and Ica
have an eye patch.
Or yes, of course. It's a goggle actually. It is. Yeah, it's a glass goggle. But yeah, Vice and Ica are great. It doesn't help that Vice is like the best shock trooper.
Yeah, he's really good.
He's an absolute beast.
He was from Skies, and I've been using him in my squad all the time. So just
Good. And Ike is adorable, and yeah, like the fact that Alan also the first aid is the girls. Fina is in Skies as well. So the three,
Really?
there's meant to be three, yeah. So they're meant to be three sisters. So Fina, Gina, and Mina, or something like that. But Fina is the one who's from Skies. Yeah, I read that in the manual. I was like, why did you do that? Just Fina's fine. But yeah, I think Sega, stop acknowledging it exists and do something with it. But I'm glad that they do acknowledge it exists. Like, I remember seeing, back when this was released in 2008, I remember seeing the Skies cameo and just going, okay, breathe.
Here's hoping.
But
yeah, so I mentioned it before. This game is directed by, I believe, the director of Skies.
Yeah, it was.
Or was he just...
It was done by the
Tanaka.
same team who worked in Overworks.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the same people worked on it, R.I.P. But, yes.
So they clearly still had a great love for your favorite game.
I sure hope so. But yes, they are the best characters in this game. They're a wonderful addition to this game. Please remaster.
Thankfully they're good characters. So you don't have to get stuck with the baggage of just nostalgia and love. It's actually useful.
Can you imagine if they were really bad? But yeah, great. Yeah. I'm so glad that they acknowledged that they're existing, and we'll leave it at that because I already spent 20 minutes talking about Skies on Dreamcast Encounter. So
I gotta say, your love of that game is intoxicating, and we all have those titles that we feel that way of. But it's always wonderful to hear just unabashed adoration for a game.
Yeah.
So before we wrap this all up, because I kind of unfortunately spoke a little bit for all of us, do we like this game? Alana, Nilson, do you like it? Is it too frustrating, or is it wonderful? I mean, Alana, I know you actually reviewed it, so technically we could all read your thoughts on it. So it's a little unfair to be like, can you recount what you did with countless hours of work, please?
Well, no, because I'm like picking it up and playing bits again to refamiliarize myself with it. I still do really, really like it. I think I could definitely go back to it again in a few years' time and happily play through it again. And like now, like I'm playing it and it's really easy to pick up and play, which is nice. But yeah, no, I really, really like it. Strategy's not my favourite genre anyway, so the fact that I gave it quite a high score is kind of relative to my taste and also what other people think as well. But I'm really enjoying it, and even when I've revisited it, even though I've noticed some other things, like you say, the arbitrariness of some of the skills and some of the repetitiveness, like I'm still enjoying it. So the fact that I can go back to it and enjoy it means that I definitely thought highly of it in the first place and still do.
For sure.
So yeah, well, hopefully that'll continue as we move on forward, and maybe we'll touch on the DLC as well as I get around to trying some of it.
How about you, Nilson?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I, might complain about certain aspects of it, you can just, as soon as you boot it up, you can tell that it's such a high quality product. Like, it's such a complete package. And there are things that I think they could have done better or maybe expanded on, but it is very satisfying just to play and to get through the battles and see the cutscenes, and it is enjoyable. I don't, sometimes I might be like, all right, like this is too much, like I need to turn it off. But overall, it is enjoyable. I don't know if it necessarily lives up to my expectations of it. I know that it's one of the best games of its era. I know that it's very, very popular. And I wouldn't say that I'm in love with it, but it is good. I do like it, and I definitely look forward to seeing where it goes. It seems like the further you get into the game that it as the battles get a little more complex and as the story starts to roll out, that it's more interesting.
Yeah, totally agree. Kind of to piggyback on that, because you mentioned especially for when it came out, it was really put in such high or kept in such high regard.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me playing it again is it still feels like a gem.
Mm-hmm.
It still feels like a hidden gem, which is weird because like I joked about before, I remember getting this game and trying to get other people to play it, and no one really did. They did fine, but it was never the big success that a lot of us always wanted it to be. And it's 7 years later, it's coming out on PS4. It's been out on Steam since I think last year, and it still has that feeling, almost that wonderful illicit thing of like people aren't playing this, and why?
Yeah.
Like it still feels like a hidden gem, even though it obviously isn't really anymore. I mean, maybe its sales numbers would say otherwise, but it still just feels like one of those wonderful beginnings to a franchise where, like you said, they don't get everything right off the bat. It's not perfect, but that core, the center of this game, the heart of this game is just so wonderful. Mm-hmm. And it really is, for me, I've said that word a bunch, it feels right. It's a wonderful game. It really is. It's charming as hell.
It is.
For all its quirky, cliche crap, it still charms me. Mm-hmm. And, the few times I've wanted to shut off the game haven't just been combat. It's sometimes in the dialogue. I'm like, I cannot believe you wrote that for that character.
Yep.
And someone got hired to say it. But, I mean, hell, I would take that in my career any day. But it is just it's a special game. And I'm so glad that they've re-released it now for PS4 and at Steam again before that. Because it is one of those games like Skies, and how I mentioned I want to play that. It should be played for people who love the genre, especially.
Definitely.
It's a wonderful little unique thing. So thank you guys for helping guide me through on this first hosting endeavor. Hopefully, listeners, it wasn't too much of a train wreck. As always, you can email us your thoughts, your hate for me and my voice being in charge to retro@rpgfan.com. Make sure you tell Josh how either awesome and or terrible I was, all up to you. You can always comment on the boards at RPGFan, in the forums. Review us on iTunes. We really do appreciate it. Of course, 5-star rating is great, but if you didn't like it, let us know why. Please, we are trying to always improve the podcast and see what's going on. And you can also find us and review us on wherever you choose to get your podcast. Doesn't have to be iTunes. We are in multiple areas and spaces. In terms of where to find us, guys, I'm at Chris Gebauer on Twitter. If you ever wanted to hear me read kids' books, you can Google me on Audible. That's always fun.
Just selling your work.
Nilson, where can we find you?
Well, I run the RPG Fan social media, so hit me up, send me a message. I'd love to chat with you.
Be nice. He does great work.
He does.
And how about you, Alana? Where can the fine folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter. So my name's Alana Hagues. Just probably look on my profile before trying to type it in on Twitter, because nobody can spell it right. It's fine. But otherwise, just if you're on the boards, message me. I'm always around to chat, and hit me up with an email if you want. AlanaH@rpgfan.com, and I'll just get back to you, because I mean, if you want to talk about Skies, then let's do it. But yeah, anything and anything. I'm chatty. I'll do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me, and thank you guys for listening. This really is a wonderful game, and hopefully, we'll still enjoy it by the time we get through with our second recording when we finally finish the game.
Yep.
Yeah, just a heads up for everyone. In the next game we'll be playing after Valkyria Chronicles is Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. That's really hard to say.
Whoa.
Trigger Happy Havoc. Yes, indeed.
From what I know,
another gem.
Yeah, another gem, but definitely the other direction.
Oh, it's so different. Oh, it's such a great game.
I'm looking forward to it. I've never played it, so excited.
Yes, indeed. But for now, bye everybody, and thank you for your time.